We'll get started pretty soon, y'all. Today's a pretty chill day. I'm just going to finish up this demo and then we're just going to do lab. Hey, Amanda. All right, it is 1 o'clock, so let's go ahead and get started, y'all. How's everyone doing today? Good? Tired? Well, it's good to see everybody here, and hopefully everybody's having a wonderful week. I'm having a pretty good week. I am extremely exhausted, but I don't think that's any news either. But you know what I'm really excited for is now that the summer session is ending, I will have some time to do some art. So I have two shows I gotta like prepare for in August. So I'll be spending my time in July kind of working on that. So that's fun. Well, anyways, just gonna jump right in. So, really quickly, a couple announcements. First and foremost, a couple things are due tomorrow. So, for those of y'all who are planning to do the sticker stuff or the cup stuff, you need to show me your cup and your sticker by tomorrow. Here's how it kind of works, okay? You're going to bring your stickers to class, and basically, we're going to take a moment to just kind of pass them out to everybody who's in the classroom. Unfortunately, if you are online, you probably can't get a sticker, but if you're friends with the person, you can ask them to save you one or something. But in general, like we're gonna pass them out to everybody who's in the class. Once we're finished with that, I'm just gonna go over to each of the people who passed out stickers. And if you did give out stickers, you can choose to have your extra credit in projects or homework. Okay, so you got to tell me which one. All right. For cups, it's really easy. You're just gonna leave your cup up here. I'm gonna show it to everybody in the class, and afterwards, I will give back your cup. Okay. So once you get your cut back, like same thing, you just let me know if it's projects or like if you want to do projects or homework. But other than that, that's pretty much it for the extra credit stuff. Anybody have any questions about extra credit? Nice. Okay. Project one resubmissions are due tomorrow. If you plan to resubmit for project one, it needs to go in the resubmissions folder. Okay. Not in the normal folder, not in the late folder, in the resubmissions folder. If you put it in the wrong folder, I'm sorry, you don't get the points. That's just how it works. So make sure it's in the right place. In terms of project two and the Photoshop exercises, those are also due tomorrow. You will have until 11:59 to turn in project two. For project one resubmission, same thing. You have until 11:59 at night. For Photoshop exercises, I will accept them up until 9 a.m. in the morning the next day. So if you can't finish them by I know some people might be a little behind. If you need to spend like one last all-nighter to like finish everything, you have Friday morning technically, right? So from 12 a.m. to 9 a.m. to like do that. Other than that though, for project two, once it does hit Friday at 12 a.m., you have to put it in the late folder. This includes all of your sketches and all of your mood boards too. Okay, and do me a favor, y'all. When you submit something late, you have to move all your sketches and mood boards. If you leave them inside of the original folder and there's no final file, I usually just delete it. That's just usually how it works. I don't take the time to go and find where everything is, mostly because I don't know. That's the thing. It's not communicated to me, you know? But so just make sure that everything is submitted in one folder. Otherwise, if it's missing, you will lose points for it. Otherwise, if you need to submit your assignment late, you have Friday to submit it for 1 day late and Saturday to submit it for 2 days late. I will accept it up until Sunday at 9 a.m. for 2 days late also. Okay, because I'm not going to grade it 12 a.m. the moment it hits Sunday morning. So you have until Sunday morning 9 a.m. to give me all of your stuff, and it will still count as 2 days late. Anybody have any questions before I show you a quick sample submission for project two? Awesome. Let's go ahead and review that really quick so that way everybody knows what to submit. Okay, so it's pretty obvious. You have to give me your final files, one JPEG and one PSD, right? So of your finished picture. You also need to give me 3 mood boards, or 3 reference boards. One that's environment, or one for design, one for mood, and one for your style, okay? I will be using those to help me grade your piece. I want to say that, okay? If you give me a whole bunch of realistic references and your stuff doesn't look realistic, you're going to lose points, okay? If you give me a whole bunch of cartoony stuff, I expect your piece to be closer to that style. Now, I understand some people have very unique styles. So I'm not going to be oh, you have a whole bunch of Steven Universe references. Your stuff doesn't look like Steven Universe, so you fail. It's not like that, okay? But having these references help me understand what you're trying to go for. So I do my best based off of the references that you give me, along with judging the aesthetic of your style to help come up with your grade. All right. So if I look at like what is it? Like y'all know the show Chowder, right? Like if you look at the show Chowder, like I don't know if y'all noticed, but a lot of times like the textures stay in place, and when the characters move, the textures don't move at all. So you can see like the overlapping of the textures like through like the clothing and all the other stuff. That would be what I'm looking for. That would be what I would be looking for if like you are to give me that sort of style, especially if you give me a whole bunch of like pictures that are similar to that. If you give me multiple references, I would say like I would do my best to like kind of judge what you're trying to go for, but I mainly grade it off of the references. I would say about 30 to 40%. And then like the rest of the 60% is how well you've like unified the style together. So like for example, if you chose a lot of really cool references, but like the style of your piece doesn't look like it could fit in any sort of product, then you would lose points for that, right? Again, this is a background environment concept piece for video games, animation, film, entertainment. So try to hit it within that realm of what is it? That realm of like that art form. Anybody have any questions so far about reference boards? Awesome. And then for sketches, here's what I'm looking for. So you need to give me 5 flat iterations, okay, of your focal point, 10 different compositional thumbnails for your environment. You're going to refine 2 of them and add values, okay? And then you're going to pick one of those, or you can do 2, it's fine, but 3 total color schemes that you're testing out, okay? If you need to have a number, 5 plus 10 is 15, 2 plus 3 is 5. I'm looking for 20 sketches total. It is 2 points off of professionalism for each one missing. And if you get a 0 on professionalism, you automatically fail the assignment because I don't take anything that's unprofessional. Anybody have any questions about this before we look at the sample submission? Awesome. So here's kind of what I expect. Let's look at Alyssa's. This person did a lot. I just want to say that. So here's your final file. By the way, only give me one final file. Like I received like multiple for this one. I'm not sure which one it is, but one JPEG and then your PSD, which I won't be able to see until I download. Your mood boards. So design, mood, style. Sketches. So this person did a lot of sketches, but 5 focal point sketches right here. By the way, this person did concept art totally right. Like when you're doing concept art, you should be thinking about everything. 10 different compositions. So this is 9 and then 10 over here. This person just copy and pasted the same one a bunch of times. I think they wanted to do more of them, but oh, there's slight differences. Okay, very slight differences. But yeah, this person, I guess, just wanted to do very slight differences. But here's 9, 10. And then for the refined ones with values, this person did multiple, but I only need 2. Okay, so probably like these. I would say push them a little bit more too. If I had to give some feedback to this, like, I guess like these 2 look pretty different over here. But when you're testing out values, when you're testing out things in general, the point is to create variation. Okay, like if I'm like, unless like you're at the final design, like for example, let's just say we have to design like Mario and Luigi's new brother. Okay, like we'd probably go through a lot of variations first, but as we narrow down on a design, the variations are not really about like the first couple variations probably gonna be like body type, right? Do you want them taller, smaller, bigger, wider, whatever, right? Like buff, whatever, right? So what are they gonna look like? Then afterwards, we go down into the silhouette and we think about like the clothing. Is this person still going to wear overalls? Are they still going to wear a hat? Maybe their overalls look different, right? Afterwards, values, right? Are we still using similar values? Is this person's overalls going to be like that bluish value that they wear, right? After that, we go into color, right? Then after that, we can go into the smaller things, okay? I recommend at the value stage, try to create more variation. Whenever I do values, I always try nighttime, daytime, afternoon, really, really dark, really, really foggy. Like think about your value, and even value grouping helps too. Like for example, if you're doing like this environment over here, right? What if like the rocks were a lot brighter and everything was a lot darker, right? Like y'all know what local value is? Anybody like not know what I mean when I say local value? So everybody knows what local value is, right? No? Yes? Oh, well, if you don't know, you didn't say anything. That's on you. Right? So your local values, you can test them out too. Okay. So test these out and then afterwards, color schemes. Try out different color schemes. All right. When you're doing color schemes, you shouldn't be making every color scheme like super, super similar to each other. Like, for example, I think these ones is just barely, it's okay because these are like pretty different. But like I think like this person could have done like one other color scheme that was like really, really different. You know, like what if the bottom was yellow and the top was purple, right? So test these things out. Like the whole point of doing concept art is to come up with multiple ideas. Like something I kind of learned is how many of y'all are graphic designers here? Any graphic designers? Okay, one. So in graphic design, when you do logo design, you have to try out, you're probably going to draw hundreds and hundreds of logos, and a lot of them are going to be good. But there's only one or two or three that's really going to fit. And the keyword is fit. It needs to fit the product that you're looking for, right? So in concept art, we come up with tons of ideas first, and we hand choose the ones that we like so that we can move forward with them. Anybody have any questions about your sketches? Anybody have any questions about submissions? Okay, well, in that case, we are going to move on. All right, so today's a pretty chill day. So I'm just going to finish this up, and then afterwards, I mean, it's just lab for the rest of the day, you know? So I want y'all to work on your stuff. If you need help on your assignments, just do me a favor. Let me paint for an hour first before calling me over to your seat. Yeah, so that way I can at least get most of this done. Okay, so I want to show y'all two ways that I like to color things. Okay, the first way is the method I usually use. The second way is, I don't use the second way as much, but it's a popular method nowadays. The way I like to add color is anybody here play like Naughty Dog games? Last of Us, right? Uncharted. Like the way I attempt color is the way that that studio likes to like implement color too. You know, so this is kind of the process they like to use. So as y'all probably remember, I've kept everything on separate layers. Like you see like the sky, the value of the sky on this layer is this. The value on the bottom is like this like brighter part, right? Let's go ahead and make this a little bit brighter too. Kind of like that. Okay, so here's what I would do. I'm gonna go ahead and select all of these here. Let's get rid of this like lock, and then we're gonna alpha lock it, okay? So just a quick reminder, alpha lock is this little checkerboard square on the lock area. And when I lock it, what it will do is it'll only allow me to paint inside of the parts that are in each layer, you see? So even the textures, when I add them in, it only stays in that layer. You all see that, right? So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna get a soft round brush with opacity. And I actually want my sky to be kind of greenish. I'm just gonna borrow this color. That's why I have references, by the way. I like to borrow colors. I'm just gonna throw this in. And let's go ahead and make this a little bit greener towards the bottom and brighter. Ooh, sorry, I messed up actually. Let's go to the top left. Let's set this at color. So y'all remember the color assignment where you had to like color in that grayscale like person and using the other photo and color in like the jug with the grapes, right? So I alpha lock my layers and I grab color on the top left. This applies color to my brush, not to my layer. So if I paint on the same layer, it'll apply that effect. So I'm gonna just borrow this color. I'm just gonna color in, and you see it keeps it the same value, but it replaces that value with that color. So I'm gonna go here too. This is the background. Let's go ahead and make this a little bit greener and a little bit lighter, kind of like that. And on the very bottom, this is the lighter part. We're gonna make that a yellowish green. It's kind of hard to see, so I'm gonna go ahead and go back to normal, and I'm just gonna go ahead and manually paint in that part. And that's a lot better. You can kind of see it now. You see those little dots, right? So you can see we have a really, really like beautiful sky. Anybody have any questions so far? So same also goes for the water and all that stuff. So if I click on this over here, right? This is all the shadow for my water. This is all the lights for my water. And this is my water. So water is going to reflect the sky probably, right? So let's go ahead and grab some of the sky color. Let's go ahead and set this back at color over here. I'm just going to go and add this tone. Oh, shoot. I forgot to alpha lock it. Alpha lock. There we go. Now that I have that, let's alpha lock these two. We're going to grab some of this blue. We're going to add this over here. We're going to go over here. We're going to grab some like maybe like some yellowish, like a really yellowish green. It's a little bit too yellow. Let's tone it down a little. Nice. It's looking really, really good. There we go. Now we have the water. It's really fast to paint this way. And I just want to say, after I'm done coloring and everything, I'm still going to add more on top. Like, this is just like how I like to block in my shadows, my lights, my main silhouette, all that stuff. But after you get everything blocked in with one color, technically you can call it finished, but we always want to embellish a little bit, right? Like that's the key. Is like you want to make it even more stunning when you look at it, right? So let's go ahead and go to these rocks here. And for these rocks, I'm still going to use kind of like a greenish tone. I'm just going to go ahead and alpha lock them all. So let's go ahead and use like a grayish green. Something kind of like that. It's a little bit too green actually. There we go. Let's go over here. Oops. A little bit more of this tone. I'm going to apply that a little bit more to the top. And on this side over here, let's go ahead and go a little bit cooler. For the shadows, let's go a little bit bluer. And we can also like create gradients, like maybe towards the front, it's a little greener. So the shadow is a little bit greener in the front and a little bluer as we go back. And again, this is still like kind of abstract. So I would actually go back and like just tighten it up a little bit. The dark shadows, let's make that bluish. And if it doesn't appear, go back to normal. And we can add darker tones towards the bottom. Maybe some of the tones we can even push a little bit of a dark green. Oh, that's too light. And then for the lights, choose a little bit of like this yellowish green. A little bit too yellow. There we go. That's looking really good so far. Anybody have any questions? Nice, nice. And then if it's too green, we can always go back and readjust it with our hue and saturation. You all see that, right? Like maybe I want it a little more bluish and grayish. Right? I can go in here and be like, oh, okay, like let's just change it a little bit. Let's go over here. Let's make this a little bluish. Let's go to the front. I want to add some like red grass on some of these rocks, but I'll do that later. The front, though, I can kind of work on right now. For the front, like, okay, let's do this. Let's grab a little bit of that blue. Oh, let's do this. A little bit more black. Let's go to the grass. Let's lock it. Let's use some red. Color. Color. Let's make this one a little bit more orangey. Let's go back up here. Normal. Ooh, too much. Oh, that's a shadow. That's why. Okay, in that case, make it a little more purplish. Oh, just a quick heads up, y'all. If I get like really quiet while I paint, it just means I'm really focused. So I just want to let y'all know that. And for the sky, let's go back to the sky. I just want to adjust it a little bit. A little bit more yellowish and lighter. Something kind of like that. For this part of the sky, let's grab this tone. I'm gonna make it really bright. Let's put this on normal. If you hold shift and you right click, you can also like go to the brush blending modes. Color. Or actually, you know what? Sorry, I don't want color. I want normal. A little bit of a tint to these. Some of them can be like tinted a little bluer too. It's like maybe a little bit more yellow in some of the clouds, a little bit bluer in some of the clouds. And then for the center, so I want to show you all two ways that you can do the center part, or just in general that you can color. Okay. So right now I kind of showed y'all that I've just been kind of colorizing everything using the color layers, right? So that's like pretty easy to do as long as you know how to use your color layers. Another really cool trick that y'all can do, and this is a trick that's actually more popular nowadays with like artists, is I'm going to make a duplicate of this. I'm going to merge one of them together. See, one of them is just all merged. So for now, I'm just going to go ahead and turn this off. I'm going to make a selection over here. So I'm going to hold Command and make a selection. And we're going to go to Image, Adjustments, and we're going to go to Gradient Map. Okay. Anybody here use gradient maps before? One person? Two people? I thought I saw another hand up. All right. Well, if you've never used that, I'm about to like blow your mind. So we're going to click on this little like drop down box over here. And basically what this means is, what do you want the shadow of your color of your shadows to be, and what do you want the color of your highlights to be? Let's add a shadow, midtone, and light. If I go over here, and let's just say I want my shadows to be blue, I can go ahead and do that, and it'll make all my shadows blue. I can go through here and just kind of see like what works. Looks like a giant iceberg. That's really cool. Over here, I want my midtones to be green. So I can go here and make them green. Kind of like that. In the very, very back, the highlights, I can make them yellowish. You can see like it does a really good job just kind of getting some like really basic tones in. Oops. And there we go. You see, we have this blocked in. Oh shoot. Whoops. Sorry. Oh, I canceled it. But it does a really, really quick job just kind of getting in all the colors really, really quickly. Like, for example, if I wanted like it to be purple, right? I can make this purple first, or like this tone, and go over here and be like, okay, well, I want my shadows to be like this tone, right? And I can go over here. I could be like, oh, I want my lights to be like really, really, really pink. Sorry, I made two of them, so let's delete that. Oh, shoot. Something weird is happening, but let's get rid of this. Let's move. Oh, that's why. Okay, well, there's two of them. I was like, how come this is acting weird? Is there more of them? Uh, there we go. So you can see we can like adjust how we want our shadows to look, how much of it we want it to appear, all that stuff. So it's a really, really, really quick way just to kind of get color in. Now, for me personally, I like to do it the way that I just recently showed you all, which is I'm going to just go ahead. So let's get rid of this, let's turn this all back on. I'm just going to colorize them. And the reason I like to colorize it is because you get a little bit more control with some of the stuff that you do. And before I continue, actually, I do want to maybe blue up the rocks just a little bit more. So let's do this. Let's go to the rocks. I just want to blue them up a little bit more. There we go. And then for this one in the very back, let's go ahead and grab some of this blue. Choose color. It's going to get this bluish. For my main shadows, let's also get it a little bluish, but a little bit more purple. Not too purple, not too much. Let's do it for these ones too. And we can also add a little bit of like greens in there too. That's kind of what I like about this method is you can add like a lot of like tone variations. You see now there's like blue and greens. You all see that, right? Like if I turn all these other ones off, like all the shadows are now like kind of bluish and greenish. Let's turn them back on. For the highlights, let's go with like a yellowish tone. And just to like create a little bit more of a gradient, let's go back to normal. Let's make it brighter and a little bit more yellow and just kind of do something like that. And you see that really helps bring it out. Let's go here. A little bit more bluish. Then finally, like kind of like these darker midtones, you can kind of do the same things to this. But I'm just going to go ahead and grab a little bit of blue too, and we're also going to just push a little bit of blue. So something kind of like that. Anybody have any questions so far? Awesome, awesome. Let's see, let's do this. I want to get rid of some of the sky here. I also want to add a little bit more sky. And I want to also push some of the parts a little more blue towards the top. Yeah, there we go. That looks really good. And for these parts, let's do this. Let's go to the clouds. Let's make it a little more saturated, a little bit darker. Oh, yeah, there we go. That looks great. And for the planets, so something I like to do is like, I like to sandwich. So what that means is like on the top, if there's like, if the bottom has red, then the top needs to have a little bit of red too. Now, I might not want to add red on the planets if I want to add red on the rock. Okay, that's something like important to think about. So instead, I am going to make the rocks a little bit, the planets a little bit cooler. Oops. Something kind of like that. Probably something kind of like that. Go to the shadows. Grab a little bit more blues. Let's go to the lights. Let's make this a little bit more yellowish. Normal. Maybe like a lighter blue. All right. Go over here. Let's make this a little darker. And cool. We have a kind of a rendered out, well, not rendered, but kind of like a blocked in piece of what we're trying to go for, like just very generally so far. Anybody have any questions? Awesome, awesome. Okay, so here's what I would kind of do next. Let's go ahead and work on the flowers. Let's do that. And just to like add a little bit of accent color, let's go ahead and make the flowers like a little bit more of a yellowish orange sort of hue. So that way our eyes like come to the bottom as also. So I want people to look at the bottom and then I want them to look at the top. That's kind of like my goal. And for this rock, before we add more things onto it, let's go ahead and lower the atmosphere just a little bit. There we go. Well, that looks a lot better. We need to add more unification to the piece. So let's go ahead and do that. Now, if I want to add more unification to the piece, here's what I want to do is, now I've recently just cut, okay, actually, you know what, before we do that, let's do the clouds. So I want to add a little bit of shadow to the clouds. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to merge everything onto like one layer. So like what is it? The mass of rock is going to be one layer. The planets will be one layer. The clouds will be one layer. And then I'm going to paint over it. Grab this brush. Just grab this. Let me make it a little bit darker. So I'm going to go to edit. I'm going to change my keyboard shortcuts. I don't like R to be rotate. I actually never rotate my image. I like it to be smudge. Let's make it smudge. There we go. Oh, what the? There we go. So a little bit of shadow and we can smudge that out for the clouds. You can even add a little bit of like these like other tones in there too into the shadows, like some blues and stuff. Go back on some more, some greener hues. That's looking really good. And then before I like merge everything down, here's what I want to do is just so I don't like, I want y'all to have my layers. So I'm going to make two versions. So this is the unmerged part. And then for this part, I'm going to start merging stuff together. But anybody have any questions about how I guess, added color into like the piece? Yeah, and it has to be on one layer too. So like for example, like if I make like this, and I'm just gonna go ahead and paint a circle. So I mean a sphere. So maybe like something kind of like this, right? If I make a new layer, so you have to make a selection, but if I use it on a new layer and I go to image, adjustments, and gradient map, it's gonna say there's nothing there. So everything has to be on one layer, including your shadows when you use a gradient map. So you see this is just one layer. So when you go to image, adjustments, and gradient map, we click on this. And then from here, we can add a light shadow and midtone. So maybe I want it to be dark red for the shadow. Maybe I want the base color to be like just like a normal red. And then maybe I want the lights to kind of be like a orangey hue to kind of show that there's a strong sense of light kind of hitting that. So kind of like that. And it applies like, if I want to add more gradients, I can too. This is like say, oh, this is where like the mid dark tones are going to be. So if I wanted to show like more, let's see, like kind of like a more of a transition. You can see it's affecting like those mid-tone darks too, or the area where it transitions from light to dark, right? So if you want to like play around with that, you could too. So you're basically just adding values based off of the gradient you're like creating here. You see, if this is like a really bright yellow, it's going to make the shadow over here a really bright yellow. Does that kind of make sense? Awesome, awesome. I recommend if you're not sure how to do gradient maps, y'all, grab the sphere that you painted from one of the assignments and the cubes and stuff, and just try to mess around with gradient map that way. That's like my suggestion. Because once you kind of understand how to do it with the cube and sphere, it's really, really easy to like apply it to stuff like this. Personally, I don't use gradient maps too much, just because like I like being able to go in and like add variation to the other parts, but that doesn't mean like using gradient maps you're not allowed to do that. You just have to do it later, and you have to just attempt it in a different way. I'm just more used to painting it the way that I paint, which by the way is like everything I teach y'all, it's not like right or wrong, like it's just a method of painting. Right. I think like with art, like everybody learns like similar techniques, but in the end of the day, like we kind of break the rules to make something that's our own. Right. So you learn all the rules to break the rules, is what I'm trying to say. Great question, though. Any other questions? Okay, let's go ahead and start merging some of these down. So I'm going to merge my rocks together. There we go. Water I'll keep separate for now. Clouds I'll merge together. Planets I'll keep separate. Sky I will keep separate too. These rocks I'll merge together. And then the foreground, I might keep it unmerged for now. Actually, you know what? Let's merge the grass together, but not the rocks. And something I want to do is let's go ahead and add more of an atmosphere. I feel like we could use more atmosphere. We can make this feel further away. Yeah, kind of like that. I think that feels a lot further away. Okay. All right, so let's go ahead and start unifying the piece a little bit better. Actually, I want to merge the planets now. I want to make them more saturated. I think they're too little saturated. Oh, actually, I kind of like it with the. Oh, that's right. I might want to add red into the rock. Oh, you know what? I don't have to. I can just do this. Actually, yeah, let's just do that. Actually, that we can just do that. That might be better. It's faster. If we make it warm up here and warm down here, it sandwiches the green in the middle. So we just make the rock green. And then from here, we're going to go to this rock. I'm going to grab a soft brush. I'm going to grab overlay. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to grab some yellow. And let's go ahead and just push some yellow into like the light part. I'm going to push more blues into like the shadows. And you can see it already. Like, I just want to show y'all really quick, a quick before and after unification. So this is what it looks like without unification. But the moment I go in here and I just start adding, so I'm going to lock this, let's make a warm light. I start adding a little bit of warmth into the light, kind of like that. And I start pushing a little bit more blues into the shadows. And I start creating a gradient. Like for shadows, y'all, there's like soft shadows and hard shadows. So I'll talk about it in a little bit, but just a quick before and after at the rock, look at that. It's really subtle, but it now feels like it's a part of the scene, right? How many of y'all have heard of the term ambient occlusion before, right? Like 3D people probably have definitely heard of it before, but 2D people, it depends because sometimes that isn't taught in painting. But ambient occlusion is really important. So just to kind of show y'all really, really quickly. So this is a image of it's a process of like this painting. So this is a sketch. This is light side versus dark side. And this is ambient occlusion. Okay. Light side versus dark side is literally the graphic design of the piece. Like if I only had to like separate the light shapes and the dark shapes of the form, what does it look like? Ambient occlusion is the subtleties within the shadows that help create transitions into those different like depths. So like for example, okay, if I stuck my hand out like this and there was like a tunnel behind me that was pitch black, right? You see the light side and dark side of the shadows of my hands. But the ambient occlusion would probably be how my hand gets darker as it goes into the shadow. So you still have light side versus dark side, but the closer I am to the tunnel in the back, the darker I'm going to look because of the shadow, right? Does it kind of make sense, y'all? So you have to think about not just light side versus dark side, but depth in terms of gradients too. So by combining ambient occlusion and shadow, you get something that kind of sort of looks like what's in the middle-ish, right? So same for this over here in the front. Get rid of some of these first. There we go. Alpha lock. I had the strangest coffee order the other day. Somebody asking me for a coffee without the coffee. And I was like, so you just want milk? And they're like, a little bit of coffee in there. And I was like, so you want coffee with milk? And they're like, no, I want no coffee, but a little bit of coffee. And I was like, how about what if I just put one shot of espresso into a milk for you? And they're like, yes, that's what I want. I was like, okay. But they're being so confusing. I was like, man, could have just told me that in the beginning. All right. I'm gonna add a little bit over here, kind of like that. Ooh, that looks really good. I like that. And let's go ahead and soften these edges a little bit here. Like these parts are facing away from the light, so I'm just gonna soften them a little. Not all of it, but just some. And you see, after I soften these edges, so I'm gonna turn off and on like my previous and like now, just to kind of show y'all. But like, just to kind of show y'all, like, look at the edges on the right-hand side of the rock right here. Okay, so like this side right here, right? When I turn this back on, look at this. So hard edge versus soft edge. You all see that, right? It feels a lot less stiff now that I have these soft edges in here, right? The areas I want to keep hard are going to be the areas facing the light because that's where people are going to be looking at as the focal area. Even when you paint characters, there's a focal point, right? Like the focal point is usually the face. And if it's not the face, it might be some sort of thing on their body that you want people to look at. Quick story. When I was designing a character once, I made the character have like a really cool belt. And it was so cool, everybody kept looking at that area, right? It's an awkward area to look at, right? So you have to be mindful about where you want people to look at in your painting. Part of creating a good illustration is guiding your viewer to see certain things and help them create a path to see other things too. So I want people to look at my rock and I want them to look at everything else after. I got to push more into the clouds actually. So I think you can have a little bit of form here. And then we can also like just something kind of like this. And then same for the planets. The planets are really far away, so we need to soften some of the edges. I'm going to use contour blend. This is a blending, it's not a blend brush, but it's a smudge brush I really like to use to soften edges. So I'm just going to make it really, really tiny, like really tiny. I'm just going to soften the edges. And when I soften the edges, it all of a sudden pushes everything back. Same with this. We don't need this to all be so hard edge. Ooh, that's looking really good. It's quick before and after. This was like maybe just 20 minutes ago, and you can see it's already looking a lot better. See, 20 minutes ago, now. The water I kept on separate layers because I still want to mess around with the ripples a little. I'm going to grab a soft brush. Just go and make it lighter, yellow. Just going to set this at overlay. So a little bit more light coming this way, a little bit more shadow on this right-hand side. That's looking really good. Also, y'all take a moment to stand back and look at your painting. Like always do that and just be like, am I looking at the places that I want people to look at? This is a pretty obvious focal point. I look straight at the rock. I don't know about y'all, but like when I see it, I look straight at the rock. Actually, you know what? Let me just look back there. So I like to like stand back and just kind of see how things look. And if it's reading from far away, that's a really good sign. Actually, like, yeah, this is looking great so far. It makes me want to go closer to look at the image more. But when I get really, really, really close to the image, I can see that the rocks are very rough. That's how you know that you need to work on certain parts. It's like from far away, it looks good, but when you walk closer, the first things that stop looking correct when you start walking closer are the things you want to fix. Does that kind of make sense, y'all? Right? So like up here, this is looking really, really awkward. So we can maybe like mess around with this a little bit. I'm just gonna go ahead and like, let's zoom out. And I like to use my selections to paint. So I'll like make a selection of an area that I want to like add light to. I'll grab like a texture brush. And what we can do is I can kind of just start. Let's grab this a little yellower, a little brighter. There we go. And you can also do like this. So maybe I want to like make this part brighter. There we go. Make this part darker. So you can kind of go in with like your selection tools to help you paint as well, y'all. And this part, I'm going to create more of an overlapping. Yeah, this part needs a lot of work, actually. It's like really, really rough. A little bit too rough for me. Like I would push more of it. And then maybe like yeah, let's erase this part down here. So it looks like it's inviting us into the image a little bit more. And then I can do this. And then something kind of like that. Except this part. I'm trying to make the rocks make more sense. They don't really make sense right now. I like messed up on the lighting a little, but you want to like maybe fix these things before jumping into color, just to be honest. Like I probably should have fixed that up in my values before because now I have to kind of play the fixing game and it like gets rid of a lot of like the cool textures that I had. Let's see. Maybe we can have this one overlap a little bit more. I also like feel like when I have to figure things out this way, it feels more like traditional painting, which can be really cool stylistically because like if you work on things as if they're traditional, then it's going to look a little more traditional. But what I don't like is having to fix everything again and like render everything again. That is a pain. There are really like two ways that you can get better at like drawing and painting, y'all. The first way is to like actually get better. Like the outcome of your first, second, third, and onwards shows improvement. The second way you get better at painting or drawing is you can make the same result, but in less the time, right? So those are two ways to improve. And a lot of times, like right now at the moment, like I'm not saying like I'm like the best artist or paint. I'm really not, you know, like there's tons of people out there who are like just in like so crazy good. But like for me, I'm at the stage where I kind of want to focus on speed a little bit more than like my actual than like actual technical stuff. And I can always improve on technical stuff. I always am constantly improving, but I feel like the more I learn about speed, the easier it is for me technically because I understand what I should be drawing and painting versus not. See, something kind of like that. Show more overlap too. This area is like really weird. Let's see. How do I want to fix this? Let's get rid of some stuff for now. I think it's just too many things. Let's go ahead and just bring back silhouettes. And then once I have the silhouettes, let's just go ahead and just throw in light side versus dark side. Let's cover these up. Excellent. Oh, lighting already looks a lot better this way. But like the rocks just need more development now. But everything's looking so much more unified because they have a unified light source. Something kind of like that. Let's go over here. Let's fix that too. So light side versus dark side, and light side versus dark side. Anybody have any questions so far? Anybody like really confused on like the way I like to paint or any of the things that I've like done? We're good. I think I want to add birds in here too. It'd be nice to have some birds. Maybe one on this side. Grab a soft brush, erase them out a little bit. Maybe too many birds. Just maybe like just one on two on one side and one on the other. Yeah, kind of like that. Let's go do this. A little bit more green. Go. And for the clouds, choose a color dodge. Let's try to just color dodge too intense actually. Use overlay. And just some white bring some white back into the clouds just to add a little bit of contrast. And this is kind of how it looked when we first finished blocking in versus now. So you can see like it's looking a lot better. The bottom rocks need a lot of work though. So maybe that's something I might like work on that a little bit later, but because I need to work on the focal point still. But I should try and fix it. Some yellows. Here we go. I also try to use bigger brushes first and then smaller brushes later. I realize like using brush sizes is really I don't golf, but like someone was telling me like when you go golfing, you're supposed to use the bigger clubs and go down to the smaller clubs as you like get closer to the hole. Because the bigger clubs are for like hitting like further away and the smaller ones are for like putting or or like just shorter distances. So that's kind of how I think about brush sizes is in the beginning, you want to use bigger brushes and then you go smaller as you work on the details and finish. Okay. Let's see. Let's do that. Add some over here. Did I tell y'all someone tried to scam us at the shop the other day? They tried to order an espresso and milk and sugar all separately to make their own latte. But like I told them like it's cheaper to just get the latte. If you buy each of the ingredients separately from us, you're spending about 50 cents more. And they were like insistent on it because they said it was cheaper, but whatever. What's up? More, yeah, exactly. More money for the shop, so whatever floats their boat. Ooh, I love this texture. Such a good texture for stone and just painting in general. Let's get some greens in here from the water. I got to work on the character too. I haven't done much to the character. Okay, let's take a really quick break, y'all. But I'm gonna just show you a quick before and after of like how things look from color, starting the color and until now. So this is what is it? I think it's about 30 to 40 minutes of just like messing around with stuff. It's looking great. Some of these yellows in the back are a little bit too strong though. I think we can maybe tone them down. So maybe I'll go back in and just kind of like tone them down a little bit. But otherwise, anybody have any questions before we take our break? Awesome. Okay, let's take a quick break and let's come back at 2:10. All right, let's go ahead and continue. So I'm going to focus a little bit more on the focal point right now, since I focused a lot on these rocks like earlier. So with the focal point over here, I'm going to go ahead and make a new layer. And just, I guess, nah, no clipping mask for now. We'll add a clipping mask. And also let's make another layer in the sky. I want to add more texture to the sky. I'm going to grab this flat brush. I just want to add a little bit of texture. I really like to add texture in my sky. It doesn't mean that you have to, but like I think it makes things feel a little more painterly. It depends on the texture too. Like sometimes smooth sky is a texture. It's really about the vibes, I would say. But I think this works really, really nicely. So just a little bit of streaks just makes it look more like a painting. Now for this part over here, let's go ahead and grab the same brush. I'm going to go ahead and just kind of add a little bit more depth to some of the rocks. Let's make it more obvious too. Let's use yellow. That. Let's do this. Go. Let's add more form to the rocks. Maybe some parts are a little bit closer. Let's make this part a little more smooth. Go. Zoom out a little bit so that I can kind of see more of the painting. Again, like it's really hard to see like the whole painting from up close, so it helps to zoom out to kind of see like if things are actually working or not. Because sometimes it might be working for where you're looking at, but when you look at it from far away, it looks totally different. A little bit of shadow here. And we can just look at a quick before and after too. It's already looking a lot better. Well, you know what might be really nice too, y'all, is if I add some color dynamics. So let's go ahead and open up our brush settings. Let's go ahead and throw in color dynamic. I'm just kind of put hue saturation around 10%. Brightness, let's keep it at 5 for now. So that way when I make like a stroke, is it doing it? Just barely. Okay, let's change the brightness a little bit more. Oh, that's a little better. Oh, wait, that's a lot better. Here we go. Bit darker green now. A little bit more bright over here to kind of show that some light is going in, but we can actually let's make this side darker. Let's throw in a little bit of green for the reflection. And same for this side here, maybe like a slightly lighter blue. That's looking a lot better, y'all. Like just kind of a quick before and after. So it's only been like 7 minutes and it's already looking a lot better just because we are fixing the form. Let's go and grab this. Let's go grab this. Now, the part that you probably will spend the most time on is going to be the focal point because you want to make sure that it's the most stunning. Maybe some of this can go out here and some of this can go behind just to show. There we go. That looks good. Over here, it can get a little bit darker. And towards the outside part, a little bit more green. And maybe this part pops out a little bit more. There we go. Something kind of like that. Ooh, that looks so good. Some hatches. Oh, that's kind of what you want with your painting is you want to look at it yourself and kind of think it looks good, you know? Like the morale helps a lot. Like when you are trying to paint and you have good morale, it's going to make you want to continue on the painting. But if you keep negatively seeing like all the things in your painting that are bothering you and you're not really like seeing the good in it too, it's going to lower your morale and it's going to ultimately make your painting fail or it's going to make it closer to failing. One of the best ways to do morale is by saving these like sort of like steps over here. Like when I save these like screen caps and I can see how much I've developed from before and after, it makes me really happy to see that, hey, I'm actually making progress. Let's see, this is something like that. Make something over here. There we go. It's looking so much more rendered out too. Let's go back here. Let's grab a soft brush again. Got to unify the piece a little bit more again because I added too much contrast. Just a little bit of, just kind of lower the contrast over there. Let's turn on the atmosphere and see how that looks too. Okay, that's not too bad. What if I smear around the atmosphere a little more? Wait, that actually looks better. Let's try. Let's try doing a little bit of. Grab this brush, A35 rotation. Oh shoot, I was painting on the wrong layer. That's not good. Just be careful. That happens. Make it a little bit bigger. Again, I paint really small because it's a lot easier for me to see what looks wrong and what looks right. I highly recommend y'all to also like you see from far away it's looking pretty good. And there's definitely more things we can push into it, but like I don't want to do that until it looks good at that specific stage. And maybe some highlights here. Maybe on these ones over here, we can add like even really, really bright highlights, maybe like yellows and stuff. Some of these like stones are really too similar to each other. So let's actually break them up a little. Maybe this can be just one oh no, it doesn't look good that way. Let's make this longer. Actually make this middle one a little bit bigger. Kind of like that. There we go. That looks better. This really flat. Copy paste. Copy paste. There we go. Merge it down. Let's fix this. The top part has too much contrast now. Let's tone it down a little bit. Let's grab a little bit of a soft brush. And I'm actually going to add a little bit of yellow on the top like this. That should tone it down a little. Let's add a little bit of, let's use a blue overlay. Oh, that's too much. A little bit of reflective light down here. More shadow. I think this part has too much contrast, so let's actually break that up. We'll use a little bit of white I save white and black for like really like areas that need it. Like it's really rare that you see pure white or pure black like anywhere. You know, like really like if it's like pitch dark, like no source of light, then you see black. But like white, like it's pretty like blinding if you see like a true white. You know, so like just be very careful. Now, I'm not saying you can't use black and white. It really depends on like what you're trying to go for, right? Like stylistically and like communication wise, all that stuff. But in terms of realism, like white and black are really only when it's like super bright or super dark. So just try to keep that in mind when you're trying to like develop out like lighting and stuff. It's like contrast is needed in areas of focus. Just have these rocks wrap around here too. I think that's going to create more form. They're kind of like right here. So sometimes like the painting might come out a little bit flat at first. And what you can do is you can kind of go back in and add a little bit more form. Like for example, I like this going inside of here. Thing about paintings too, y'all, is if you have enough information in the other parts and your focal point is pretty clear, it also can make your painting look a lot more finished. Like, I wrote like this research paper, and it was like on how like impressionist artwork is like really good to study if you want to learn like concept art. And the reason is because like if you look at a lot of concept art, some of them are really refined, and those are called like keyframe shots, right? But sometimes they're like a little bit like rougher. Like for example, Theo Prince, Nathan Folks, right? Like if you look at their work, it's very impressionistic, right? Like if you look at it, like it, the you can tell they're elephants, you can tell they're rocks, you can tell there's trees, right? And Nathan doesn't have to draw out or paint every single one of those things. There's enough information so that it almost seems like we're looking at this like pretty realistically, right? But it doesn't show everything, but has enough information to suggest what's in there. And with enough detail and enough refinement in certain areas, our brain kind of fills in the rest of the parts that are a little bit looser. Does that kind of make sense, everyone? Right? Like, for example, let's look at another artist, maybe Edgar Payne. By the way, I don't know if anyone follows me on Instagram, but I went to a Raisin Cane's and they had like a random Edgar Payne painting in there. Like, it was so pretty. I was just like, is that real? And they're like, I think so. And I was like, you guys know that's a really famous artist, right? A really famous painter. Like, oh, we didn't know that. It's like, yeah, this guy just painted like the city of Mission Viejo before the buildings were here. And I was like, yeah, that's Edgar Payne. Like, we painters actually study his work quite a lot. But yeah, if you look at Edgar Payne's stuff, look at all these like sort of like brush strokes here, right? Like you don't need to draw every single leaf and every single like cloud, every single texture for it to look like that. Like you just pick the right things to show and you refine the right things, right? Like over here, right? If you look at this, like it's really brushy in some areas and really refined in some areas, right? It's the refined parts that people want to that you're kind of telling people, hey, look at this area. But the areas that are not as refined, those are the areas where our brain kind of fills in the gaps and be like, oh, okay, even though I'm not really sure what that is, I know what that is because it has enough information in there for me to know what it is while still like leaving some of it like unfinished for my brain to fill in. Just do this. And the same even goes for like the rock that I'm painting. Like if you look at like these parts of the rocks, like up here, it's a lot more refined. But if you go to the bottom, it's a little bit looser, right? And it's because like I just want people to like focus a little bit more on the top. Tone down some stuff. In a painting, what's also good to remember is you don't always have to show everything. It's not about showing every single part. It's about showing the parts that you want people to see. But readability is most important. If you're going to leave something rough, but nobody can tell what it is, then that's not good. Usually, anybody know what is the first thing we see when we look at an object? Anybody know? Like, what is the first thing our brain scans? Like, if I look at you as a person, which 2D element do we see first? Yeah, shape, silhouette, right? That's why from the back of people's heads, like y'all ever like see people from far away, like I know who that is, even though it's the back of their head, right? It's because our brain recognizes shapes. So you want to make sure that the shape is really, really strong. Like if you look at Nathan's paintings again, so let's go back to Nathan's paintings. And you look at like this one over here. Notice how all these things over here are shapes. Look at the elephant. Those are just shapes, right? The way it's set up and staged is it's backlit. So Nathan wants it so that there's not a lot of visibility in the shadow area. So they're mostly silhouette. There's only visibility in the areas that the light hits, right? But everything else kind of falls into shadow or silhouette. So with that, we can kind of use silhouette to help our painting read a little bit more clearly. Now be careful of my tangents too. Don't want much. You don't want tangents, right? Let's have this go in here. Let's have this go in here. You know what's interesting though is shape provides us with readability and personality, right? Like for example, if you see a silhouette with a bunch of spiky things, is going to look scary or dangerous, right? If you see something rounder, like Baymax from like Big Hero 6, right? It's going to look a lot more approachable. But form is very important. Anybody ever heard of form language before? Some people, yes. Yeah. Form language is basically, so you know how like if we see a circular shape, square shape, or triangular shape, it tells us kind of like what personality it has, right? Form tells us function. For example, if I draw something, so let's just say I have like a rock over here. Okay, so this is a rock, right? And then all of a sudden, I draw this. What do you all think we can do with this rock? You can open it, right? It looks like a doorknob, right? Form tells us function. When you're doing concept art, okay, your shape tells you the story, but your form tells you your function. So good designers, they base their idea off of forms, but they use shapes to make it more interesting. For example, if I'm making this is a really basic doorknob, right? But how do I make a doorknob look like a doorknob still and work like a doorknob, but it looks different, right? Like I can replace it with certain, like if this is made out of candy, maybe this over here is like a chocolate bar, right? So maybe this is like a chocolate bar, right? And then maybe this over here is like some sort of like, I don't know, like gumdrop candy, right? Like as long as these things look like the forms that they're supposed to look like, you can change the shapes and the design to make it more interesting. Does that kind of make sense, everyone? Like for example, I don't know if I told you all this already, but like it's not the best Star Wars movie, but anybody like watch Episode 8? I know it's terrible, but okay. There's one spaceship in there that looks like a clothing iron. Okay, it literally is a clothing iron from far away, but it has little windows so you can tell it's a spaceship. What do you think people do in that spaceship? Laundry. It's the Empire's laundry ship. That's where they do all the laundry. That's forming. You're making it look like a spaceship and you're making it look like a clothing iron at the same time so that people understand what function it is. Now, it functionally needs to look like a spaceship first because it's a spaceship. So the clothing iron actually adds the story and the personality. But the clothing iron functionally also makes us think that this is for laundry, right? So you can play around with different forms to help you out with function. And that's really how you want to design. Like, for example, if I'm like, how do you design a car for prehistoric times? Right? And this is a really old design. This is like maybe that was something I watched, right? But look at this. How do we know it's a car? It has seats, it has wheels, it has a rooftop. It looks like a car, but just made out of different parts, right? That's how you design concepts. So it doesn't matter if it's something weird, like just like a big piece of a big log, right? As long as it has wheels and a body with seats that you can sit in and a roof over it, it's going to look like a car. So that's how design kind of works. Now, over here, this is not really, I mean, this is just a really big rock, right? But what if we want to make it scary, right? So if we want to make it scary, we can use a skull, right, for the rock shape. It tells us something about this rock functionally that we don't understand, which in this case, it makes the rock look incredibly, I mean, I don't want to go there. If I saw that in real life and my friends were like, hey, you want to go check it out? I'm like, no, you guys can go check it out. I'm going to wait back here, right? So when y'all are designing things, you need to think about the form language. I like the way this painting is turning out too. It's a fun painting. I think storytelling wise, it's not super crazy. I mean, it's just a person and like a really crazy big rock landscape. Like then be cooler things happening. Like what I can add like flying, like more islands, and then maybe like ships in the sky. Like there's so much more I can push in it. But just for time's sake, which by the way, y'all, simple and good is still good. Like I would highly recommend for those of y'all who want to get into like concept art, not every concept has to be filled with tons of stuff. In fact, it might be better if you show variety, right? Like if you only do daytime scenes and you have no nighttime scenes, you're not showing that skill, right? If you're only doing like things with rocks and you have nothing else, you don't have any buildings, it shows that you don't know how to do perspective or buildings. I recommend to have different things in your pieces, and that includes things that are very simple and things that are very detailed too. There are pieces that are more minimalist, and there are pieces that are more maximalist. But what they look for when you're trying to apply is first and foremost, can your artwork fit what we're looking for the product? Is it the right style? Do you have the right skills? And like, do you have like is everything you're showing what helps? Like, for example, let's just say I want to do a cyberpunk Egyptian video game. Okay. If two people at the same skill show me their portfolio and one person does more Egyptian stuff and the other person does more like Chinese inspired art, right? Which one do you think like I would want to hire if they're the same exact skill? And not knowing their personality, because personality matters. Okay. All of us professionals would rather work with somebody who is medium quality, but extremely, extremely, extremely awesome to work with than someone who's an amazing painter and designer who's a jerk. Nobody wants to work with a jerk. But yeah, if that's the case, like who would I want to pick, right? Probably the person who studied Egyptian architecture and Egyptian culture a little bit more, because we need that for our assignment. We need that for the product, right? Not having the right research is going to hurt. Anybody here play Tekken? No? It's like, y'all know Tekken, right? The fighting game, right? Once, twice, maybe. There, a really, really, really long time ago, this is like when I was like maybe in high school, one of the Tekken games got like, it was like on fire. Like it was like getting canceled basically. And they had to like fix a bunch of stuff because someone didn't do their research. So as you probably know in these fighting games, like Street Fighter, they like to create fighters based off of people all over the world, right? And for one of the characters, it was a Middle Eastern character. Long story short, the fighting grounds was a temple, but they put the name of the god all over the floor. So basically it looks like we're stepping all over the god, and everybody got really upset over that. And this is because of poor research. You have to do your research. Okay, especially if you are getting into something like storytelling and concept art. Because if you say the wrong thing or you do the wrong thing, that doesn't just come back to hurt you as an artist, that comes back to hurt the company. And not only does that like, what is it, tarnish some of the company's image, but it costs money from the company because now they have to rectify your mistake. Right? So just be mindful when you're doing research, when you're doing your artwork, y'all, you have to do the research. But in general, y'all, you want to make sure you show that you understand, or you're showing stuff that shows that you can actually create something for the company product-wise. Let's add a little bit of texture. There's no noise. I usually like to do this last, but it might be nice to do a little bit now. Let's make a new layer. Let's use overlay. Grab some darker tones. Oh, what the heck? How come nothing is appearing? Oh, there we go. I don't know why nothing was. Oh, it's because it's on the wrong thing. That's why. There we go. Yeah, just a little bit of dots. Noise is so nice, y'all. If you want to make something more realistic, so this doesn't count for all art styles because some art styles are very flat. But like in real life, there's noise. Okay, like for example, like skin. Skin has texture. Sometimes people paint skin so smooth, it looks like they either put a face mask all over their body and it's just like super smooth, or like it looks like plastic. But skin has texture. Skin has pores. especially if you're up close to someone's face, there's textures all over the place, right? The same goes for everything else. Like there's going to be textures on certain things, like even glass. If you look at this, there's like watermarks on it, you know? So noise, you have like big texture and small texture. Like for example, big texture is if I had to paint a rock, what forms make a rock? And that's what we have right here. But then we have noise texture. And noise texture is what does the rock feel like when I touch it? And when I touch it, I imagine that it's probably going to have all these little pores on there, right? And I don't add them in every single place. In fact, I would maybe add it everywhere first, kind of like this, and then go back in and erase the parts that you don't really need to add as much. Now, who can tell me in which one of your form shadows do you see texture the most? Anybody know? Is it your highlights, midtone lights, core shadow, midtone darks, or reflective lights? Anybody know? Anyone want to take a guess? Well, the answer is your midtone lights. And here's why. So imagine that I have a surface that kind of looks like this. So imagine this is a piece of paper and I have a whole bunch of like little spines coming out from it, kind of like that. Okay. And this is like in perspective right now. So, and then maybe these like really on top of each other right here, kind of like that. Okay. So imagine if it's kind of like that, right? Now from a side view, it's probably going to look like this, right? From a side view, like a true side view, like if it's flat, we're not going to, all of the spines are overlapping each other. It's going to look like that. Now, if we have sunlight coming in this way and it starts to hit everything, this is going to be, so let me actually do this. Let's grab this, magic wand, let's make everything gray. So if there's sunlight coming down this way, light is going to hit here, light is going to hit here, it's going to hit here, it's going to hit here, it's going to hit here, right? But what happens is when light keeps coming down in the same direction, which by the way, y'all, like light cannot bend. It can only, it can bounce. Okay, it only bends when we physically make it bend using certain things. Like if you have like mirrors or like tubes or things like that, then yes, right? But usually when light comes down from the sun, it radiates out this way, right? So technically it's kind of like a spotlight. Like if you have a spotlight, it's going to radiate out this way. But because the sun is so big and we're so small, it feels parallel where we stand. Okay, it technically is not. Because have you ever seen that like Egyptian I forgot what it's called. It was like this research, but back then the Egyptians, they wanted to test if the earth was like flat or round. And basically they found out that the obelisks in two different parts of the region had different shadows, and that's how they figured out that the earth was like round. Was that like there was a longer shadow in one part and one of the shadows was like literally under the obelisk. So that shows that the earth was round, right? So sorry, flat earthers. But anyways, it's going to feel pretty parallel if it's big. Now, if it hits this part, you see where it starts to get round, right? Over here, it's going to hit this part. And then over here, it's going to hit this part and this part. And then over here, it's going to hit this part. You all see that, right? So what's going to happen is these parts over here in the green, it's going to be a cast shadow. So from up close, it's going to feel flat over here. So if I had a sphere, and let's just say we had little spines on the sphere. The area that the light is hitting, it's probably going to look like that, right? It's going to be kind of flat. But the moment the shadow starts to appear on these little spines, we start to see texture. So I'm just going to grab a noise brush. So we'll start to see a little bit more texture in this area. So the answer is we actually see most texture in our midtones because Texture is only created when the little tiny pores or whatever they're supposed to be, the little textures, we only see them when light hits them and it creates a cast shadow. Does it kind of make sense, everyone, what I'm trying to say? Anybody like super confused? Awesome, awesome. So I don't want to add too much texture in areas that don't have that, right? So we can go ahead and go move back a little bit and we can erase some of these texture in areas that feel like there's a little bit too much. And usually I like to push a little bit more texture in areas that have focus, but not on the highlights because you don't see that much texture on the highlights. That's where the sun or like the light directly hits. Sorry, I'm trying not to burp while talking. I've done that once, and all the students were like, ew. And I was like, oh, I got so embarrassed. Oops. All right. Let's merge these down a little bit. Let's work on the character. I haven't worked on the character yet. For the character, I'm gonna give them a pink or a magenta. There we go. And then for the stick, let's make it brown, a darker brown. Make it a little bit darker, a little more saturated. For here, let's go ahead and do this. A little bit of shadow here. Let's go ahead and add some atmosphere in the front. So in between the rocks and the people. Okay, there we go. That's a little better. Okay. Let's go ahead and add some like splatter too. One thing I like to do for like ocean scenes or places with water is I like a little bit of splatter. It looks nice. Also makes it look like there's like sea breeze and stuff. And it adds texture too. You can erase some stuff, smudge it out. Go back to the rocks. Let's push some of it a little bit more. Here, push some of these parts blue. Let's go to the water. Oh, there's the water. Okay. For some of these parts a little bluer. And then on top of the water, I want to grab like a flat brush. I'm just gonna add a little bit of like usually when water hits like rocks or things, like you can see like a little bit of what is it, like just like foam. Same with over here. It doesn't have to be white either. We can make it like a greenish tone actually. It might actually be better, like a yellowish tone. Because from far away, we actually wouldn't be able to see white over there unless it was like really, really, really bright. I would say I'm actually almost done with this for this demo. It's not too much more I want to do to this. Let's see. Let's go ahead and go here. Let's do this. I want to start post-processing a little bit. So let's go ahead and I'm going to create another layer, but this time I'm going to merge the whole group. I'm going to create a copy. So all of my like works in progress like layers are down here for y'all. Okay. I'm going to make two. So this is a quick like just step by step of like how things have progressed. So this is like in the beginning after I finished coloring, after I unified it a little bit and refinement. You all see that, right? Now, the last thing that I would do, y'all, is I would just basically merge everything on one layer. And I'm going to go ahead and grab a soft round brush. I'm going to just reunify everything. So I'm going to grab an overlay. I'm just going to go ahead and grab some like tones. I'm just going to go ahead and try to push them. I'm going to push them in certain areas. Like maybe I want this part a little bit darker, kind of like that. Let's push a little bit more green over here. A little bit more green over, a little bit more green and yellow over here too. Go and grab some color dodge. Add a little bit of color dodge in areas that just to like make them pop out a little bit more. So just like areas, just like hand picked to like just you see it just like little pop outs. And if it's too much, I'm just gonna lower the opacity a little bit. There we go. Let's merge them down. And I'm just gonna smudge the birds a little too. They're a little bit too hard edged. I like to smudge things that are kind of in motion. Like not all the way, just soften. Just paint on top a little bit. And I want to show y'all like one really quick last trick before I like wrap up this painting. Like basically, in my opinion, I mean, we can always push it more, but it's pretty readable and it's pretty clean. And there's a lot of good detail in there. I like how it looks too. Let's add a little bit more reflective light. That'll be kind of nice. Ooh, that looks really good. Okay, so one thing that y'all can do that, okay, I don't like showing this until the end, and you're not allowed to photo bash, okay? So photo bashing is where you just grab photos and you try to Photoshop them. It kind of like what we did for like the rocket ship like into the landscape, like sort of like exercise. Okay. Now photo bashing is actually a really good skill to learn, but for this class, I don't want y'all to do it because most people who come here, this is their first time learning how to paint. So you can't break the rules yet until you actually learn how to paint. You know, like if you're going to be photo bashing, it's probably going to be for like special studies or your portfolio class after you learn how to paint and do all that stuff. But I want to show you how to photo texture. Okay. Photo texturing. So when I use a texture brush, like for example, if I'm like, oh, I like I like dirt texture. So I grab like dirt dots and I make like this texture, right? This is a texture brush, right? But sometimes a texture brush is not going to, it can't give you like everything. Now, it can give you a lot, you know, but sometimes you have to push it a little bit more, right? So this is me using a texture brush. Now, one thing you can do is you can also use photo textures. So for example, I'm just going to type in rock cliff, kind of like that. And we're just going to go ahead and find something that has a really nice texture. It's something that kind of fits what we're going for. I like these two, but I want to look at them a little bit more. Okay, so maybe let's grab this one. So I'm going to copy the image. I'm going to throw this on. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go ahead and just kind of like right click, distort, and just kind of like figure out areas that I want to put this texture on. So maybe like towards the top here, right? And by the way, don't rely on this. It doesn't make your painting better. And especially if you're not doing a good job on this part. Like it's only for amplifying what you have already, but it can also make it look worse if it's not like set right. So maybe something kind of like this, right? I'm going to go ahead and just get rid of all the background stuff. Erase. And then we can go to overlay. And you can see it adds some really, really, really nice noise in there. Y'all see that, right? Some really, really nice noise. And I don't want to keep everything in here. That's not the point. And I want the noise to maybe like follow. So let's make another copy here. I want it to like maybe follow like kind of what the direction the rocks are going. And what I want to do is let's go ahead and lower the opacity. Not by too much. I'm going to go to make a mask. I'm just going to mask everything first. So everything is gone. Now I'm going to grab a soft brush and I'm going to unmask the parts that I want to push a little bit more texture in. You all see that, right? So I can spot texture certain parts to have a little bit more noise. You can see it before and after. You all see that, right? So it adds a little bit more texture to certain parts. And again, you don't want it everywhere. If you add texture to all your shadows and all your lights and all your midtones, who knows what happens? Like if it's the same flat texture. Well, what if I do this? I'm just going to grab this picture. I'm just going to throw it on top of everything. So if I grab this image and I just kind of threw it on top of here, I just did this and I lowered it, what happened to the whole image? Doesn't it feel flat, right? You need to have variation. If there's a lot of texture in this part, you need less texture in the other part. So this pops out. If you have texture everywhere, it flattens it. So in areas, I already said this. So in your midtones, you need more texture. So areas of shadow will go ahead and get rid of some of the texture. Not all the shadows. You see a little bit of texture in the reflective lights too. But anywhere that has a lot of highlights or a lot of shadow, I try to get out a little bit of texture. So only the midtones show texture. Now, two things I want to show y'all. You can also use post-processing effects to create interesting colors. For example, one of the teachers here, unfortunately, well, not unfortunately, but I'm happy for him because he retired. He deserves it. He's at that age now. But it's unfortunate because he was like just an amazing teacher. But you can use images to help you create color too. Like for example, let's just say I like this color. Let's throw it in here. Let's rotate it, kind of like that. Let's make it bigger. And then let's go ahead and set overlay. And that can look really pretty, but it doesn't really give us everything we need at the moment. And you can go around and test different things too. Like sometimes it doesn't look good this way. So maybe soft light, right? And let's go ahead and just pump up the color. So I'm going to go to hue and saturation. Let's pump up the saturation so it's really, really, really colorful. And here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go to filter, blur, and Gaussian blur. And let's go ahead and just blur this. Just like that. And that can give you some really, really fun gradients to work with. Now, it doesn't necessarily make it look good. You have to be mindful of what you're doing. Right? So maybe this area in the bottom right, it got too dark. So again, I go back in and I only spot add the areas that need it. You see, here's how the rock looks before and after. Now there's a lot more of these like beautiful tones that are in the rock, right? We have like reds, blues, purples, yellows. Anybody have any questions about that? Awesome, awesome. And here's one last trick I want to show y'all for post-processing. So y'all see this little Pokeball thing down here? Sorry, it's covering it. That looks like a little Pokeball. If you click on that, that allows you to add layer adjustments without going to image and adjustments. So what it does though, so let's just say I want to add a hue and saturation layer. Now everything under the hue and saturation layer will be affected by color. But if I like put this layer in between, like let's just say like the rock and like the textures and these parts, it's only going to affect whatever's underneath this. So it's only going to affect everything underneath here. Now I'm not going to use this, but it's really useful. Instead, what I want to do is let's go here and then let's go to color lookup. Color lookup is a really low-key adjustment that not a lot of people use. And I don't know if I'll apply it to this, but I just want to show you all this. This can be a really good way to kind of add one last effect. So these are actually filters. So if I click on this, they look a little bit different. Ooh, actually, that's kind of cool. It's scary. Kind of reminds me of Destiny, actually. Restrip, that's too much. So that's something y'all can do is like you can go through this to see if there's anything that looks even cooler. Now, it's not always going to do a good job, so I'm probably not going to apply it to mine. But in general, it could be a really, really, really fun way to just add a little bit more into like your colors. Let's do one more. Let's do one more layer. I want to do two more. Let's do an overlay again so I can push some of like the other stuff. get rid of some of this too much. Overlay. Let's do like a pink. Yeah, there we go. I don't want to like super, super pink, but I do want to like a little bit more pushed.